Yo, what's up? My name's RetroPat, and today I want to give you guys my top 10 tips for new video game collectors in the year 2023. I'm pretty excited to make this video because I do feel like some of my tips may be a little more untraditional or aren't really given as often, but I feel like they might be a huge use for a lot of people. Tip number one, for example, not exactly something you really hear given to new players, but I really recommend focusing collecting region-free consoles if you care about those or enjoy any of those. Now, what I mean by a region-free console is consoles that are not region locked. Region lock is when you can only play that region's games on those consoles. So for example, the PS2 is region locked. You can only play American made games on an American console, and you can only play Japanese released games on a Japanese console. So you'd have to get two different consoles to play these different variants, and sometimes playing certain games in a different language or playing them through a different region can be a lot cheaper. You'll often notice that with Pokemon and such for GBA. A lot of people are very okay with getting Japanese complete in box copies of Pokemon Emerald, Pokemon Fire Red, whatever. If you're familiar enough with the game, it's totally okay to just ignore the language barrier and just play it through Japanese, even if you don't know the language. Like I talked about a second ago, some good examples of region-free consoles are the PSP and the DS. There are some at-home plug-in like TV play consoles that are region-free as well. Here's a full list of all region-free consoles. Now, I'm only going to call out the important ones here, but things like the Atari Lynx, the Game Boy Advanced SP, all the GBC, that's all really important. Game Gear is an interesting one. And some cool ones, PlayStation 3, the Nintendo Switch, the DS Lite. I think the PlayStation 3 is a huge one. Coming from an Xbox 360 fanboy, this one kind of hurts, but if you're a new video game collector, you might want to actually focus your efforts on the PS3, unless you specifically like the Xbox 360 like myself. But going for PS3, you'll be able to buy certain Japanese exclusives or just versions of games that might be cheaper in Japanese. And to give you an idea of how severe these price differences can get, here we can see Pokemon Emerald complete in box in the US version is $469, whereas the Japanese complete in box copy of Emerald is only $130. You can even get it PAL, which is a fully English copy, for $250. So keeping an eye out for different region variants for region-free consoles is super important. Not every console is region-free, and you want to be aware of that. So don't collect, Japanese games for like PS2 unless you have a either modded PS2 or a Japanese console to be able to run those games. But I think being aware of region-free collecting and being aware of your price options is super important to know up front, which is not something I feel like is normally told to new collectors. On to tip number 2. Keep an eye out for re-releases and definitive editions. Now, what I mean by this is that there are usually multiple different releases of a game, and if one is more optimal and you buy the suboptimal one out of nostalgia or for whatever reason, you want to look into that. Do your research before buying a copy of a game. A mistake that I made was picking up Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. Now, I love this game to death. It was actually one of the better games, probably one of my favorite games of all time, like top 20, top 15. Loved it to death. Kind of rough reviews on it, surprisingly, but I love this game. But my point is, I bought this game for $5 or whatever for the 360. It's a really cheap game, but I could have gotten Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning for the Xbox One, which is around $5 to $8, maybe a little bit more expensive, but it's around the same price. And the Re-Reckoning is literally just a better copy. It comes with some of the DLC, if I'm not mistaken, and a huge flaw that Re-Reckoning fixes from this game is that Re-Reckoning actually has endgame. This is like a Diablo-type RPG. You battle through, you do your combat, whatever. But at the end game, the monsters and stuff don't scale with you. So what happens is there's not much of an end game and the game feels wonky and weird. But Re-Reckoning has those monsters scaling with you, so there's way more infinite gameplay, which is something that I really want. I want to keep playing this game, but I can't really because I got the wrong version. I didn't do my research. I didn't look into, Re-Reckoning versus Reckoning. I didn't look into the details of it. I was somewhat aware of it existing, but I didn't do enough research, and I made a poor purchase because of it. You'll also end up with things like this. I own 3 different copies of Gears of War, and you want to avoid this if possible. Now, I will say, these 2 I'm happy to own. This one's a childhood copy. This was really kind of unpreventable, or I'm happy with it, I should say. This is a childhood copy. I would never get rid of this. Gears of War 1, fantastic game. And then you have these two copies. So that's the original copy on 360. This is a re-release, a definitive edition on Xbox One, which is a fantastic game. This is probably one of the best deals in gaming. If you're looking to get into the Xbox One, pick this up ASAP. It's like $9. It's the Gears of War Ultimate Edition. It's a full graphical upgrade, I guess. It looks really, really, really good. I was very shocked by it. And then you also get the Rare Replay Collection, which comes with Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, all the Banjo games, except for like Banjo Pilot on GBA. It comes with Conker's Bad Fur Day, which is huge for a lot of people, and a lot of older Rare Replay release titles. It's a great game, but I'm getting sidetracked. I own 3 copies of Gears of War. I own the original copy, the definitive or the upgrade edition, the definitive ultimate edition, and then also the collector's edition for the 360. Now, I'm happy with all of this, but you as a new collector, you may want to like iron down a little bit and not own all of these. These are different to me because they have sentimental value and such, but you want to be aware of what editions of a game exist before buying one or jumping into it. Let me go ahead and show you guys how I would go about finding the correct edition for something, or just finding all of the editions that are available. If I look up something like Halo, there's going to be so many different variants. Let me go ahead and go to Halo, maybe Combat Evolved. Let's look for the very first Halo. How many editions of the first Halo exist? You know, we have the original Halo Combat Evolved on PAL Xbox, as you can see there. We have Halo on PC. We have it on NA Xbox. You can see right here. We've got Japanese Xbox 360. We have the Anniversary Edition. Just looking up games like this and seeing. So we have the traditional edition on different platforms. We have the Anniversary Edition. You know, what's in the Anniversary Edition? What does that entail? What does that come with? Keep scrolling through. We have some not for resales. We have platinum hits versus the original. If you just keep scrolling through, you can get a company store. There's different variants, right? There's always going to be different releases, and kind of scrolling through all of these and figuring out, okay, which do I want to go? We can sort by, if we're sure we want an NTSC or an American copy, we can sort by that and scroll through and see these are all the American copies of Halo that exist. But something like Halo has a million different releases, and it's important to look through and figure out, you know, which one do I want? Do I want multiple? Do I want to aim for do I only need one copy of Halo? Probably, right? Depends if you're a big Halo collector. It's really important to figure out what version of the game you want ahead of time. All right, tip number 3, don't collect what's hot. You want to avoid things that are really popular. It drives the prices up. Avoid things right now like GameCube, 3DS, Switch. Nintendo in general is pretty tough. Now, you want to end up collecting what's not, which is number 4. We'll get into that in a quick sec, but I do want to show you guys, this is what it looks like to collect right now for something like the 3DS, where the average game price is $26. That's pretty drastic. And then you have GameCube where it's $33, right? That's a pretty expensive average title. Now, obviously, high things like Pokemon Box or the Barbie game bring these up. It's always hilarious that Barbie Groom and Glam Pups is the most expensive 3DS game. That's a hilarious collector meme, but yeah, 3DS, Switch especially, or 3DS and GameCube especially, are really expensive right now, and it's best to avoid those. They will go down over time when people are less interested in them. Certain games will go up. I want to preface, if you really love 3DS, if 3DS is your favorite console in the whole world, I'm not telling you not to collect for that. If you love 3DS, if it's your favorite thing in the whole wide world, obviously go collect for that. Collect whatever you enjoy. These are just sort of my tips and tricks. I'm a huge budget collector, and I really enjoy saving money when possible. Collecting video games is a really expensive hobby, and it's really fun to be able to do so on a budget and do it well, honestly. And honestly, people always say, you know, when I think about it, people always say that collecting video games is a really expensive hobby, but it really doesn't have to be. There are so many $5 games that you're going to get 10 to 30 hours of an enjoyment of. That's actually really cheap in terms of compared to other media. You know, if you go even buy a movie for $20 and you watch that movie even like 5 times or something, like pretty well, right? Or 4 times, you'd have to watch that movie 4 times to equal out the, not even like, you'd have less hours of entertainment. So let's say you get a 2-hour movie, you watch it 4 times, it's 8 hours of entertainment for $20 versus Kingdoms of Amalur I played for 50 hours. That can cost me $5-6. Video games actually have some of the highest entertainment hours per dollar spent out of any hobby. And I think it's something that we should abuse and we should think about. We have to make smart decisions, though, and not just buy coin flip whether the newest game is going to be good or not, like Gollum. All right, but that's enough about avoiding what not to collect, avoiding what's hot. You want to do number 4, which is collect what's not. Things like original Xbox, Xbox 360. I can show you guys here. Remember how the average GameCube game was around $34? The average Xbox 360 game is around $11. The difference is astronomical. I'm telling you, there are so many masterpiece class games that I constantly tell people about on the 360. The Mass Effect series, the Halo series. The early COD campaigns are really good in my opinion. I know it gets COD, you know, lol, omega lol memes, but like the Black Ops 1 campaign, if you haven't played it, is genuinely an incredible storyline. Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, the Gears of War saga, all of these games I'm mentioning are all around $5 a piece. The Borderlands trilogy, it's pretty astronomical how many masterpiece games that we know are reviewed really highly and really respected are just really cheap versus coin flipping $70 on a game like Gollum, or even, in my opinion, even on a game like Baldur's Gate 3. You know what? Baldur's Gate 3 may be an incredible game. It may be a 10 out of 10, but the question becomes, do you really need to play it now? Do you want to play it now? And for some people, the answer is going to be yes. For some people like myself, you know what? I know that Baldur's Gate 3, I'm going to love it to death, but I can wait 8 years until it becomes $5 and it's overprinted, and I can just wait. I have so many other incredible games to play. You know what? I'm in no rush to play Baldur's Gate 3. I know that I'm going to love it. I know it's going to be a great game, but why do I need to play it now? I think those are the questions that are really important to ask yourself, and I don't think it gets brought up enough. Now, you do want to support game developers, and it sucks because if everybody waited on the secondhand market to buy a game, then, you know, game developers wouldn't make money, which is unfortunate, but as consumers, you do want to make the smartest decisions possible and do whatever benefits us to a decent extent. If you want to go above and beyond and support game developers that you know are doing an incredible job and buy Baldur's Gate 3 on release, I encourage that and I'm happy for you. But me, myself, on a budget, I love waiting 5-10 years to buy it on the secondhand market, where I'll pick up a copy of Baldur's Gate 3 for wicked cheap. It's already been patched and updated and all the bugs are fixed, and I'll love my time whenever that comes. I'm in no rush to play these new games. All right, but I showed off the Xbox 360. I talked about the original Xbox. There's so many consoles that you can collect for that are not hot. There's usually way more consoles that are not than those that are hot, if that makes sense. Physical PC games, collecting big box PC games, those can be a little bit of a pain to run if you know that you're comfortable, like, kind of working out the nooks and crannies of actually getting those games to run. Collecting physical PC or big box PC can be wildly cheap. You will see some insane 20-pound, I've covered it here on this channel, you'll see it all the time on eBay, 20-pound lots of PC games for like 20 to 30 bucks. That's how I built a lot of my collection. I've probably spent 60 to 80 bucks on PC games, and I have a much bigger collection of PC games than like Xbox One or PS3 or most of my other systems, because it's just so easy and cheap and affordable to collect for. There's a lot of fun nostalgic games in there for me to explore. Also, cart only and loose disc games, not for everybody. Some people love to collect complete in box only. I like to collect complete in box whenever possible, especially for stuff like Game Boy. I really love complete in box Game Boy, but that's a tough thing to bite. But cart only collecting and loose disc collecting can be done really well. It can be done coolly. It can be done aesthetically. I think having like different little sections to, section. I've done videos covering loose disc collecting. I have a little at-home stationary case that I really like to just kind of scroll through. It's fun. I think loose disc collecting and cart only collecting should be encouraged more. All right, next up, I'm going to be talking about how to actually collect and how to buy things, specifically off of, this is an eBay tip. This is number 5. And these are tips, a lot of these, I'm going to be honest, stole these straight from Pete Dorr like 10 years ago, and I've been using them ever since. And they are just incredible eBay tactics. Searching for lots and bundles on eBay, or even just searching through console names or different companies, is super powerful. So what I like to search for is auction. I go for auction. I go for video games and consoles as the category. I then go over to ending soonest. I just search the term lot, a very blank empty term, and then I just scroll and scroll and scroll, and I'll kind of watch list stuff here if it's a good deal. I very often buy most of my video games at around 33% or 30% value per game at retail, and then I'm able to trade in the games that I don't want to local stores or just sell them off, and keep the games that I do want. And I'm able to collect either neutral or at a profit a lot of the time, which is a pretty insane thing. Now, you do need to put in a lot more time to search for the deals and such. It's a fair amount of scrolling, I'll be totally honest, but there are also third-party programs or third-party things that can allow you to just find those eBay lots a little better. Things like price charting, if you pay for like the premium monthly thing. If you want to save some time but spend some money, you can pay for the little eBay lot skimmer on price charting, which allows you to sort through and find those deals and find those valuable collections. All right, and then selling off extra eBay lot games goes into number 6, which is going to be find and develop a relationship with local stores if you're privileged enough to have any of those pretty active around you. Usually should have some, at least like 30 minutes, 40 minutes away, worst case scenario. I'm really lucky. I live in the state of Maryland. I feel like our retro video game scene and like trading card game scene is pretty huge. It can sometimes be hard to find these businesses. They're usually pretty small businesses, but it depends. It can even be hard to find them online sometimes. Sometimes you may need to look around on like Facebook or certain groups and stuff like that, local groups, to actually find out where they're located at. But developing those relationships and knowing their trade prices and what they accept is really important, and like what condition and such. Being able to turn around unwanted games or extra games from lots and bundles can be extremely important. Having that extra confidence that you need to pull the trigger on a purchase that you can instantly turn around and sell it is wildly impactful. If a lot costs around $35 and I can trade in 60% of the games in that lot for $30 store credit and then keep the 1 to 3 other games that I'm interested in, you have to know, is this a deal you're willing to take? Cash is not the same as store credit. That's something always important to keep in mind, but I guess most people would say yes to that deal. Understanding what to look out for and how to get that extra trade in. I do that all the time. I will buy, especially loose disc lots, because maybe you're not a loose disc collector, but you might want one here or there. Maybe you have like some empty cases. I'm a huge fan of collecting empty cases and loose discs separately, but that's a much more macro plan that I would not recommend that to new collectors. That's a much more macro, long-term mentality of collecting. But understanding, hey, I'm gonna buy this lot, it's worth $40 in store credit, not retail. Understanding the differences between this lot is worth X amount in retail and X amount store credit is super important. All right, on to number 7, and this is one that I myself and probably everyone is guilty of at some point or another. Don't skimp on necessities. If you have 3 Switch controllers, all with stick drift, maybe hold out on buying that new Mario game until you either get those fixed or buy a replacement Switch controller for one of them. Knowing the quality of Switch controllers, you may never be able to pick up a game at that rate, so maybe just pick up a Pro controller, but it's still really important to keep in mind, do I have a TV? Do I have a controller? Do I have the correct cords? Even stuff like, it shocks me how many people, and as in coming into the hobby, I didn't know this either. It shocked me how many people don't have like component cables for their PS2 or a TV that accepts component. You definitely look for that if possible, or certain converters. That is a huge quality of life up that will totally benefit you tremendously. Or this is a huge one that just blew my mind, because growing up, I didn't have a TV for my Xbox 360. I didn't have an HDMI port on my TV. I just didn't. Growing up and being used to Xbox 360 AV output, switching to HDMI blew my mind. Maybe you're a huge noob collector like me and you're like, oh, you can HDMI 360? Like, it'll blow your mind. Or you're probably a normal person who already knew all of that. But yeah, that was a really shocking experience to me. All right, on to number 8. Double price check. All right, now double price checking. Price charting is a fantastic, incredible site that we're really, really lucky to have access to. If you don't know, price charting is a website that I use for all my videos. It's a website that pretty much every video game collector uses. You can track your collection as well as double check prices. Now, the way that prices are gathered is by, they do recent eBay sales. So if I look for Space-Based Startopia, a pretty newer Xbox One game, I scroll down, I can see that these are the copies that have sold recently for this game. So we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are the new sold listings. Like how many complete in box? Only 2 complete in box sold listings, for example. You see the averages across eBay and like what's been selling. Now this is pretty accurate, but it's not always 100% accurate. It doesn't go into the caveats if you're an older retro collector. It doesn't go into condition, which can massively impact the price of something. If I look up Pokemon Fire Red, for example, and we go over to that, I'm sure we're going to see some pretty drastically different complete in box prices. Yeah, look at this. We see this might have been like a cart only that it gets logged sometimes. So like a good example of price charting not being 100% accurate. We see $585 right here versus $350. That's a what? $235 difference, I would bet, because of a conditional difference. Stuff like that is really important to be aware of. But the point of double price checking, I'm just trying to cast doubt on price charting, which is kind of sad because I love it. It's a great site, but you do want to double price check. So, for example, if I go over to a site like eStarland, this is just a site that I use because it's a pretty local store to me. It's also a really good one. Even if eStarland isn't local to you, this is actually a very, very good, in my opinion, online. It's a very good online video game seller. Imagine DK Oldies, but it's actually good. They actually refurbish their consoles, and they actually give you a really good warranty and take care of quality products. Sometimes you'll pay a little bit of a premium on eStarland, but usually it's pretty minimal. Let's do Pokemon Fire Red is a tough one. This one you probably do pay a fair premium on, because I doubt they're getting many copies traded in for this, but let's go ahead and see. So yeah, you are paying a little bit of a premium. Well, kind of. You're paying like $8 more for loose on eStarland versus loose on eBay. And yeah, I don't having that $8 difference for a warranty. You definitely won't get fakes, or if it is a fake, you'll definitely get refunded. They're really good about that. I'm not sponsored by any of these companies or anything I'm talking about here today. I'm really just talking about from personal experience, the good relationships that I've had from certain companies, businesses, or stores. All right, let's do an Xbox One game, because this is where I find that price charting can often be off on these newer gen stuff, just because it's not that often that like Xbox One stuff is just sold on eBay right now. It's usually sold through GameStops or other like active game stores, since it's the current gen console. So I do really notice that certain current gen stuff does end up being out or priced incorrectly sometimes. So we see the Crisis Remastered Trilogy at $22 here. Let's go over and see remastered. Let's see how this comes up on eStarland. We'll see if it pops up. Crisis Remastered Trilogy. You're looking at, they're out of stock, but sometimes, and you'll notice, they're actually cheaper. It just depends on the item. I think for a lot of newer stuff as well, they end up being cheaper on, or certain stuff. You can find eStarland lacking sometimes and get some really good deals. I know for a fact that I bought my Gears of War Collector's Edition from them for, I think it was $11. Gears of War Collectors. Let's actually look up. I bought this for $11 from them. Oh, I want the first one. Gears of War. And then I also bought the Oblivion Collector's Edition from them. A little beat up on the corners, but that was also like $13. Yeah, so right now the Gears of War Limited Edition looking around $24, and I was able to pick that up from eStarland for a pretty good deal. Same with the Oblivion Collector's Edition. Let's check to see if that pops up. Collector's Edition looking at around 26. I got it for around 13. So sometimes you can find things like collector's editions or things like that for a really good deal, but all of this just goes back into double price checking and just making sure your bases are all covered. Sometimes a site is incorrect. You can triple price check if you really want to, but I think double is going to do it most of the time. All right, next up, number 9. This is a risky one to recommend that I think a lot of people will disagree with. Kind of a controversial tip, and it's just going to depend on what kind of collector you are and what kind of person you are. Many people say to start off collecting by only sticking to 1 or 2 consoles. But honestly, in my opinion, it depends on how long you plan to collect and how hard and fast you want to go with the hobby. I always collected preemptively for consoles I didn't even own yet. Picking up PSP games before I even had a usable system. I still even do this with things like the Atari Jaguar or the PS4. I try to pick up games here and there, or I picked up a controller complete in box for the Jaguar recently. Right here you can see on my shelf. My rule personally is I'll buy most video games at around 33% value, because usually at that price, I'm able to sell it to a local shop or quickly online for at least some profit. Worst case scenario, if I end up never getting the console or I end up never getting something, I'm okay with tying up some of my capital to just sell it off later and make a little bit of profit. A lot of people may not be willing to collect those really niche things like Japanese PSP games or things like complete in box Atari Jaguar controllers, but I'm willing to. I like the history of video games. I like having that stuff on my shelf and owning it and displaying it and one day playing with it. It worked out with the PSP stuff. Now I have multiple working PSPs from actually a broken lot of consoles that I bought and fixed up. If you can get into this, kind of an honorable mention tip, but that's more so for people, if you have an engineering background or an electrician background, especially, you're going to kill it in this hobby. Anything like that, or even like woodworking, anything that you're good with your hands or a computer hardware background, getting into repairing hardware or at least like troubleshooting and understanding how to troubleshoot, you can end up buying broken lot consoles on eBay or things like that. And a lot of times it can just be cosmetic damage, or it can be a quick clean of like the disc laser, the disc drive. And I've bought many consoles like that. I've got a PS3 that from a broken lot console, a PS2 where I just dusted out the drive and it totally worked fully. Stuff like that. You can get some really good deals and find some budget consoles if you're okay with a little bit of jank. All right, and then tip number 10, the final tip. This video did end up being longer than I expected it to be, but hopefully it's been helpful. If you're still watching to this point, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe for more videos like this one. Set spending limits is number 10. Spending limits, or restricting the time you're allowed to shop in general. If like the limits don't really line up for you, that method doesn't really work for you. If you notice you're spending a little too much money, maybe take a couple days off of eBay, or don't go out to thrift stores. Don't go out to your local stores for a couple days. It's okay to just take a break for a little bit. I promise there will still be good deals when you return. And sometimes if you browse for, this is a problem that I have, if you browse for too many days, you get this sort of dopamine loop where it's like, man, I'm browsing for something, I can't find a good deal. You end up forcing a purchase when it's actually not that great of a deal. So what happens is, let's say you've searched on eBay for like 2 hours a day for the past 5 to 7 days and you just haven't found a deal. Sometimes that happens. You may pull the trigger and force a purchase just to get that dopamine, because you feel like you've worked hard for something, but it doesn't always line up like that. It doesn't always worth to find. You can't force a deal, right? So keep that in mind. Taking a break from buying is really good. Also, if you're constantly buying, it kind of depends. If you're constantly buying, depending on how much time you have, you just end up so far behind on your backlog, and you'll always be behind on your game backlog. It's okay. You kind of always do want to be buying, selling, and playing, doing those three things. But if you notice you want to be doing those three things in like 33, 33, 33. So like 33% buying. Some people want to sell, some people don't. I don't do a whole lot of selling, to be totally honest. If anything, I do a lot of trading into local stores, and I just end up making profit through that, even though they take at 40, 50, 60% value. But you want to be doing a little bit of everything at all times for long-term macro efficiency. But just making sure you are playing as fast as you are buying. That's never really going to happen, but playing a fair bit. As long as you're playing at least 25% or 50% out of the games you're buying, I think that's a pretty cool thing to shoot for. Just create your percentage. Maybe you want to play through, maybe you want a completionist in 100% every single game before you buy a new game. Totally fine. Whatever you want to do, set your own goals, your own boundaries. The percentages can be different for everybody. But that's it. That is the video for today. Hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully it was enjoyable. I'm just one guy, one collector, one small brain, one little guy. There's a lot more collective brains out there that could come up with a lot greater tips than I could. But hopefully something here was at least helpful. Hopefully it was enjoyable, entertaining, or something of the less. Something positive on your day. Like the video if it was. Dislike if not, if it was a waste of your time. Subscribe to the channel for more retro video games, just video game content in general, all types of stuff. Reviews, tips like this, purchasing tips, budget stuff, and I'm going to keep making videos. Have a great day. I'll see you guys later. Peace.